Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. What's new in Joe, what's new with you?
Oh, wow. What's new? That's a real loaded question.
You said you were working on some things in your house. What are you doing at home?
Oh, yeah. We're going to have all the kids coming home for Christmas and Thanksgiving.
Okay.
In October this year. We're going to do Thanksgiving and Christmas together in October. Okay. And when all the kids come home, there's a lot of them. And we have one large room in our basement that doesn't get used except for when the kids come home. Mm-hmm. And so in order to make room for a few more people, we're dividing that room in half. Okay. And I've built a wall and going to insulate it and put a little more soundproofing on the ceiling, mm-hmm. and had to rewire it separately so that all the lights, when somebody was in the one room, it didn't turn off the lights in the other room, and so forth.
Yeah.
So that's the project that's going on right now. I also have some tile in a bathroom that needs to be replaced that's kind of coming loose. And I have this list that my wife has. She's really hoping I get done before all the kids come home.
Right.
Honey, I'm working on it.
Got it.
Yeah.
I don't have a list like that. I really don't have a list like that. There are some long-term things we've talked about doing at our house. The room where John sleeps, there is another storage room kind of behind that.
Yeah.
And right now, his wall is the wall of that storage room, and there's a hallway to kind of get into that room. We've talked about cutting a hole and putting a door in the wall between that other room and John's bedroom. Especially when Katie and her husband, they have 3 boys.
Yeah.
So that would be perfect for them.
Mm-hmm.
So they could sleep in one room and the boys could sleep in another room.
Yep, that's kind of what we're looking at, that same type of situation.
Yeah, so we've talked about that. We haven't done that. We haven't done that yet. Part of it's because John's still at home.
Yeah, yep.
And that room that's back around the corner from his room is real. He has a workbench in there. It's like a workroom.
Yeah, I've heard about some of the projects he's worked on in there.
He has a ton of stuff in that room. We have some of our stuff in that room. He has a ton of stuff in that room. So
we have gone through a process for about, close to 10 years now of, as kids have moved out, getting rid of stuff.
Yeah.
And
So how does that work? Do you make them take it? How does that work?
Yeah.
I need some advice.
We kind of gave them an ultimatum. If you want it, you need to take it or it's going to go away.
Okay.
Yeah. And even this week, there are a few things that Cheryl's getting rid of.
Okay.
And so on our family text page, she took a picture and said, anybody want these because they're going? And you know what? They all wanted them. Mm-hmm. And so now we've still got them until they come in October. We have to remember to make them take them when they come back.
Right. I would say the biggest thing we have in our house is that you probably remember moving that big bed.
Oh, yes.
The loft bed that we have. It weighs 4,000 pounds.
Going down the steps was a lot of fun.
Yep. Our son, our oldest son, Nathan, that loft bed was his 11th grade woods project.
Wow. That's cool.
Well, it's in our basement. It's in our garage. So I guess it's cool.
Yeah.
I guess it's cool. So anyway, so we got a question this morning.
Yeah.
I got it, then you got it.
Uh-huh.
And didn't really have anything to do with Sunday, which was fine.
I don't think so. I did read from Matthew 17, so whether they were reading on after that's a possibility.
Okay.
Yeah, which is awesome.
Yeah, okay, so that's good. Maybe maybe that was the question. So the question that we got, there are a couple times where Jesus talks about faith, and he talks to he chastises the disciples for their lack of faith. And then he says something like...
That is such a biblical term.
Yeah. Well, that was my biblical education. And then he says something like, if you have more faith, you can move a mountain.
Yeah.
Is that kind of the flow of the...
of both.
Of the question, of the scenes, I guess, that we're talking about?
Yeah.
And then the question then that we got, kind of reading into the question was, so what do I have to do to have, like, is this for me? What do I have to do to have that kind of faith to move mountains?
Yeah.
What is this saying? What is this saying to me about the amount of faith that I have, and can I move mountains?
Yeah.
Is that fair?
I think that's the bottom line and undercurrent of the question. Okay. Yeah.
So when we were talking about this, we thought it would be helpful to explain a little bit about what's going on in the scenes,
right?
Before we jump into those, the like what's being said by Jesus.
Yeah,
is maybe a better way to put it.
Yeah.
So the first one. So let's take them chronologically.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Okay. So the first scene is talked about both in Mark 9, and did you open the Matthew text?
I did.
Okay. So the first scene is talked about in Mark 9 and Matthew 17.
17. Yeah.
Okay. So Jesus has been transfigured. Mm-hmm. You have you ever, other than talking about this, have you ever used that word in a sentence?
Transfigured?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Okay. So great.
Yeah.
So Jesus has been transfigured, and here's what happened. He went up on a mountain with his three, Peter, James, and John.
Yeah.
And they heard a voice. Probably some translations say something like, "This is my son,
in whom I'm
well pleased." Like that sounds very similar to what happened when Jesus was baptized.
Yeah.
And he began to glow.
Yeah.
And then Moses and Elijah showed up.
Yes. Yeah.
So all of this is happening on this mountain. And down below, where the rest of the disciples and the apostles were, there was another scene kind of developing.
Yeah. The other disciples were with some people, and there was a young man who was demon possessed, or a boy actually, who was demon possessed, and his dad had come and asked these apostles, the disciples, if they could cast him out. And
right. Oh, so separate. So Jesus and the three come down the mountain.
Yeah.
And like this is like I'm just making this this would be the Bible Project would call this a not a web link. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
What's the word that you?
I'll think of it in a minute.
Okay, yeah. Just shout it out when you hear it. I can't think of the word. Dang it, it's right there. So this is what the Bible Project would call whatever that word is. Hyperlink.
Yep.
The Bible Project would call this a hyperlink.
Yeah.
So if you remember the scene back in Exodus, Moses is coming down the mountain and there's a great commotion.
Yeah.
So this would be and I just thought of this right now. This would be a hyperlink. This would be a reminder. Jesus is coming down the mountain and there's a commotion.
Yeah.
And he basically says, in Mark 9:16, Jesus says, "What's going on here?
Yeah.
What are you all arguing about?"
Yeah. I gotta sneeze.
Okay. And then the man says, "Well, I brought my son so that he would be healed. He's possessed by an evil spirit. This is what happens. And I asked your disciples to cast this demon out, and they couldn't do it."
They couldn't do it. Yeah.
And Jesus says, "You faithless people," like I can imagine, just rolls his eyes. Like we're going to be really dramatic.
Oh, come on, guys!
Faithless people. How long must I be with you?
Yeah.
Like parents, have you ever said that to your kids? How long must I put up with all of your junk in my basement?
Yeah.
How long must I put up with you? Bring the boy to me.
Yeah.
Bring him the boy. Evil spirit sees Jesus. The boy starts to shake.
Yeah, Jesus rebukes the boy, or the demon.
Yep.
And it left him. And
you skipped it. Oh, you're reading the Matthew.
In Matthew, that's all
this
he
is good.
says.
Excellent.
He says, Jesus rebuked the demon in the boy, and it left him. From that moment, the boy was well. But Mark
adds a few more details.
Yeah. What does it say there?
So they bring the boy. He has this convulsion. Jesus says, how long has this been happening? The man tells him, have mercy and help us if you can.
Yeah.
Says the father. And Jesus says, so I'm just going to, this is how I would say it. What do you mean if I can?
Yeah.
Anything is possible if a person believes. And then I love the father's response. I know I've talked about this before. I do believe, this is in Mark, I do believe, help my unbelief. Help me overcome my unbelief.
Yeah.
So Jesus kind of looks around, sees this crowd gathering, and he says, cast the demon out. Few things happen. A little bit later, Jesus is alone with his disciples, and they ask the question, why, this is in Mark, why couldn't we cast this out? And Jesus says something. In Matthew, Jesus says one thing. What does Jesus say? When they get asked that question, what does Jesus say in Matthew?
Before I answer that, I think it's interesting that they waited to ask him. Because if they'd asked him right then, what would have he had to tell them in front of everybody else? And so they're thinking, I'm not sure how this happened, but I'm going to find out.
Yeah.
And this is what in Matthew records it this way. He says, you don't have enough faith, Jesus said to them. I tell you the truth. If you had faith even as small as a mustard seed, you could say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it would move. Nothing would be impossible.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's the first chronologically. If you had more faith, disciples. Well, interestingly, Mark doesn't say that. When they ask in the Gospel of Mark why they couldn't cast the demon out, Jesus' response is different.
Yeah.
Sort of. Unless you read the asterisk in Matthew. Jesus says, well, this kind can only be cast out by prayer. So, in Matthew, he says it's about faith. In Mark, it's about prayer.
Yeah. Matthew includes that part about faith. Mark, for some reason or other, doesn't.
Right.
In some of the
other way around.
Yeah.
The opposite of what you just said. Mark includes faith. Matthew, for some reason, doesn't.
No.
And then Matthew talks about faith, but Mark doesn't talk about faith.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
So there's kind of a flip.
There is. Yeah.
In what's going on. So this faith of a mustard seed, that is in specific response to the disciples not being able to cast out this demon. So when I read this text and I ask this question, so what's going on here? Is this about faith and moving mountains? The bottom line answer is no.
No, not really.
Jesus is talking to his disciples and he's chastising them because they don't believe something. They don't have enough faith in him. Yeah. Essentially.
Yeah. And it's interesting that both of them pointed out, both Matthew and Mark pointed out, they did it later.
Yeah.
They didn't, this message wasn't for the whole crowd. It was for these specific men who had been hanging out with Jesus for a long time.
Right.
And being taught and watching him perform his miracles. And I think by this time, I didn't check this, but I think by this time they'd been sent out 2 by 2 and had power to cast out demons before. Yeah. And so now what's different about this situation? And the difference was there was something about this particular demon that needed some extra special attention.
Right.
And it had to do with the way that the apostles had tried to do it, or didn't try to do it.
And according to Mark, it had something to do with the faith of the Father.
Yes. Yes.
So whether it's the disciples or whether it's the Father, there's something about faith or what people believe about I think it's ultimately either in who Jesus is or what he can do.
Yeah. And it's surrounded in these passages by examples of his authority. He just came down off the mountain. He was transfigured. He was in between two of the most important people that the Hebrew people held up as authority.
Right.
And God was saying, this is the one you need to listen to.
Yeah, when the Jews would have talked about the importance of the law and the prophets, in a lot of ways they were talking about two people. They were talking about Moses and Elijah.
Yeah.
So now if we skip forward a few, so I'm going to stay in Mark, you stay in Matthew.
Okay.
So we skip forward a few chapters in Matthew, and now are in Mark, and we're in Mark 11.
Yeah.
So this is a little bit after the scene that we just discussed. Jesus and the disciples are entering into Jerusalem. They see. And I'm not going to explain all this. They go into Jerusalem. They kind of look around. They leave. They're going back in like the next day. Jesus sees a tree that it looks like it's ripe.
Yeah.
So it appears like it should have figs on it. So Jesus walks over. There are no figs. He curses the tree. He cleanses the temple, and then either later that day, I think is how Matthew talks about it, or the next morning, which is how Mark talks about it. They again go by this fig tree, and it's shriveled up and it's dead.
Yeah,
and it's Peter who says what any of us would say: "Hey, look, this fig tree that you just cursed yesterday is dead."
Yeah.
And Jesus says, have faith in God. Like, this is his answer. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. Look, Rabbi, the fig tree you cursed is withered and died. Have faith in God. I tell you the truth. You can say to this mountain, may you be lifted up and thrown into the sea, and it will happen. But you must really believe it will happen and have no doubt in your heart. I tell you the truth. I tell you, you can pray for anything. If you believe that you've received it, it will be yours. And if you're praying, blah, 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 hold a grudge. Don't do this.
Yeah.
What's different? I'm curious... From the Matthew text,
I was looking
what's different
to
about the
see
scene?
Where
it is in. You know what? It might not be in.
Yeah, it's the phrasing I think that's in both of them, but they're two different incidences because I don't think Matthew mentions the fig tree.
Matthew doesn't mention the fig tree,
yeah.
So this is really just in Mark. Then.
Yeah.
So again, Jesus talks about faith and mountains.
Yeah. It's that phrasing that's there.
So then again, and this is the question that we received. What do I have to do to have faith to move mountains?
Yeah.
And again, that's
not the right question.
That's not the right question, and don't mean that in a harsh way. So don't interpret that. But like he is, I think Jesus's response is. And we want to be careful when we attribute motive, especially to Jesus.
Sure. Yeah.
But I think what Jesus is doing is he's saying, well, of course, because that's what I told it to do. In his own way, I think that's what Jesus is saying. Of course the fig tree died because I told it to. I cursed it.
Yeah. I had the authority to do that.
And you as Peter, as the disciples, you too have at your disposal the same power if you would believe.
Yeah. And you think about that in the context of where soon Jesus wasn't going to be with them.
Right.
And he makes mention of that in this area.
Right.
And he says, you need to know that the authority is in me, and I'm going to be giving you that kind of authority It's still my power. It's not their power. And
Right.
the apostles, every time after Jesus was crucified, rose from the dead, and went to heaven, every time the apostles did something and people thought that they were doing it themselves, they made an issue of, this isn't me, this is in the name
Right.
of Jesus. This is
Right.
Jesus' authority. And Jesus needs them to know that you have access to this,
Right.
but you need to use it correctly.
Yeah. And I think this is a good instance of making sure that I'm not like, I'm glad you said it was the wrong question and not me. Like, seriously. I think this is just such a good instance of, we want to make sure that that we don't read these texts in isolation.
Right.
So I shouldn't, like, I want to be careful. We want you to be careful as people who are reading and studying the Bible to not, like, the takeaway from this is not, well, if I have more faith, then I can move mountains.
Yeah.
That's not the takeaway.
Right. It's not the point that the writer is making.
Right.
It's not the point that Jesus was making to his disciples at the time. And so it's very easy for me to place myself in the position of the disciples and say, what if I don't have enough faith?
Right.
Is that the reason why things aren't happening when I pray?
Yeah.
And that's not really what Jesus is saying. What Jesus is saying is, you do need to pray. And when you pray, if it's my will, if it's in accordance with my will, and this is pointed out in other places in Scripture,
Right.
then it will be answered.
And now,
And great things could happen and will happen.
right, and I think now we're starting to get to we're starting to uncover the kind of, I want to hesitate to use the word our takeaway, but I think we're starting to uncover what we are to do with this text.
Yeah.
And I think it is so incredibly important for Christians to understand and remember that like, I want to say it correctly, that this book is not written to us, but it's written for us.
Yeah.
And we want to be very careful in the way that we look at the text and not just take something out of this and say, well, the Bible says if I have enough faith, I can move mountains.
Yeah.
I mean, it does say that, but that's not what it means. Jesus is having a very specific conversation in a specific time and in a specific place that is meant for those disciples.
Yes.
But then also the Bible is meant for me. So
Yeah.
now, how do I what I like the way they have only said it one time, and I really like the way they said it. They said on the Bible Project, they talked about, well, then what is like how is this meaningful to me?
Yeah.
So then what do I do? How do I interact with this text?
Yeah, I think the issue that Jesus is pointing out here is, when you pray, recognize the authority
Yeah.
that you're praying to, and in that recognition, that authority then has the authority to make the decision whether or not that prayer is being asked in the correct way or being how it needs to be answered. The authority to answer it in the correct way.
Yeah.
And so, in the incident of the boy who was demon possessed, there was something in the way that the apostles were trying to cast that out that wasn't connected correctly to the authority that had the authority to cast it out.
And I think when we read both the Matthew version of that scene and the Mark version of that scene, and we begin to put them together, they were missing something.
They were missing something in it.
And I think it's interesting that Matthew, except for the earliest known manuscripts, That's the little asterisk. Like Matthew indicates that they were missing something about. Matthew indicates he talks about prayer.
Yeah.
Or he talks about faith. Their faith was lacking.
Yeah.
Mark talks about they didn't pray.
Right.
So let's combine those two.
Yeah.
So they were missing something. They were missing a step. And it might have been faith or it might have been prayer, and it was probably a combination of those two things.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
My guess is they were trying to do it under their own power.
Under their own power. That's really what it appears as. Yeah.
I'm going to bring my son, and the disciples couldn't do it. Well, why couldn't they do it? In that instance, I would say it was because they were trying to act under their own power.
Yeah.
And that bears itself out in what Jesus says to them, either in Matthew and or in Mark.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They were trying to do something under their own power.
Yeah. 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 And so when I think about what is the takeaway for me, God has given us the opportunity to go to Him and seek Him in His power in our situations. And the way we do that is through prayer.
Yeah.
And the results of our prayer are based on our belief. I think that's evident in this also. And they're based on our understanding of God's will for us. Oftentimes we go and ask Him, Lord, show me your will in this. I don't think God wants us to pray that a door will close without us touching it, a physical thing like that. I don't think that's part of this, and some people would take this verse out of context and say, I could move mountains if my faith was great enough.
Yeah.
I don't believe that God is saying that He wants us to be able to do that.
And I would say that people have, and the person who asked this question isn't doing this.
Right.
But I would certainly say that texts like this are prone to abuse.
Yeah.
Meaning, the reason that thing didn't go right in your life is because you didn't have enough faith.
Yeah.
Or the reason you didn't get this is because you didn't have faith. And what people will do is they'll utilize a text like this, and they'll say, "See, it says right here, if you have faith, you can move mountains." And the reason that you didn't get this thing, you didn't get that promotion, you didn't get that money, you didn't get that car, you didn't get healed. The reason you didn't get that is because you didn't have enough faith. That's wrong.
Right. I agree. Yeah.
That is not what this text is saying.
Right.
But it is saying something, and I think it is reasonable. I love the Father's response.
Yeah.
I do believe, but help me overcome my unbelief.
Yeah.
I don't remember when the first time I really discovered and understood that text. But that's such a powerful thing because there's a lot, you know what? I believe, if you were to ask me, I believe this is true. Believe it's true.
Yeah.
And there's so much that I'm man, but I don't have that confidence.
Yeah.
I don't have the faith. I don't have there are so many aspects of my walk with God that fall short.
Right.
And it's not because I don't believe it or know it's true.
Right.
It's because I'm not I just don't trust it.
Yeah. And I think the Father is a great example of someone who loved His Son so much that He was going to do whatever He could to get him healed. And he'd heard, I'm imagining, he'd obviously heard that there's this group of people where people are getting healed, and he had come to find them. Well, Jesus just happened to be gone away from the group at that time with a couple of them, and a few of them. And so he went to the ones that were associated with Jesus and said, "Can you heal my son?" And they couldn't.
Right.
And I can imagine how they felt in the moment, having been able to cast out other demons. And I can imagine how the Father must have felt so left out, or felt put out, or let down. That's the word I'm looking for, in that situation. And when Jesus came back and said that it can be done, but he needs to believe, and he says, "Help me with my belief." I think it comes around to, I know I'm missing something, but I don't know what it is.
Right.
And I've been there.
Yeah.
I know I'm missing something, but I need to know what it is. Help me with that.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I love about that passage.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm with you. I believe it. I believe with all my heart that God can do this. But what am I missing?
Mm-hmm.
Help me with that. And maybe that's the best thing to take away from this is when we pray, that's a great prayer.
Mm-hmm.
Guide me, Lord, and show me what I need to do in this situation
Right.
to allow your work to be done. And again, it comes back to that authority to
Right.
allow your work to be done.
And that doesn't mean that everything we're asking from God we're going to get it.
Not the way we're thinking.
And I think
Yeah.
that's of course, you know what? I do believe that God can do great things.
Mm-hmm.
And there's parts of me that are unsure. So, you know what, God, I work on my belief.
Yeah.
Work on
Yeah.
my faith.
Yeah.
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 So in summary, these texts are not about if I had more faith, then I could move mountains.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's not the point.
No, these texts are about encouraging us to, who and what are we placing our hope and trust in?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Are we depending on ourselves, or are we trusting in and waiting to see what God can do? And it can be really easy to get those things confused.
Yeah.
It can be really easy for us to read the Bible and make it about us.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's not.
Yeah. 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 I think that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. By the way, thanks for the question.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good question. Because this is as I said, these texts are easily misinterpreted and not just misinterpreted, they're easily misused.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're I think willingly misused by some.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right.
And we don't want to.
Sadly.
Yeah, I mean, and we don't want to. We don't want to do that. We don't want to misuse the text.
Right.
We don't want to go to someone who is in the midst of hardship and reality and say, if you had more faith, this wouldn't be an issue in your life. That's just, man, that is so not true.
Yeah.
That is so not true. So yeah, I'm appreciative of those questions because it makes me have to dig in. We talk about that all the time.
Yep.
So, do we have anything happening this weekend?
Do we have anything happening this weekend?
I can't remember.
Yes, we do. We have something. The last time we did it was so fun that people couldn't quit talking about it.
Right.
For months and months.
Right.
And even when COVID hit and we were planning it, we had people come to us and said, "Are you going to do it?"
Right.
And we said, "Well, we can't right now."
Mm-hmm.
But we moved it back. And that is the food pack.
Right.
And this Sunday, we are planning on packing at least 33,000 meals that will be packaged up and sent away to
Haiti, I think.
needy families in Haiti.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting, Jeff, our contact in this, and the guy that helps us organize it with Lifeline Ministries. He said there's 20 contacts within Haiti that they have that they find out where it needs to be sent to based on those contacts. And then those contacts have a network that they spread it out throughout the country to make sure that it goes where it's most needed.
Right. Cool.
That is awesome to me.
Yeah. So this week, I said this weekend because it's not just a Sunday thing. If you are on our email list, you're going to get this in email tomorrow, but I'm going to tell you anyway.
Yeah.
Saturday at 5:00, the Lifeline Christian Mission truck is going to get here. It's going to arrive at Westway at our building. If you can help, we need you here. We're going to unload. We're going to set up all the tables. We're going to put everything into place at 5:00, starting at 5:00 on Sunday or Saturday. We're going to start in the afternoon. We're going to start putting everything into place at 5 p.m. on Saturday evening, and then at 7, Jeff and Mark.
Paul.
Nope.
You put me on the spot.
I did. Ben.
Ben.
Yeah, Jeff and Ben from Lifeline Christian Mission
Sorry, Ben.
are gonna are going to be here, and they're gonna,
and his son,
and Ben's son,
who is in Colorado.
They're going to talk about what Lifeline does, all of the things that Lifeline does, because they don't just food pack, they don't just deliver food, they do lots of things.
Yeah. Can I share a for instance on that? Before they would rent these great big containers, and they'd send it down in the container, it'd get unloaded by one of those contacts or some of those contacts in Haiti, and then the container would come back or go somewhere else. Now what they're doing is they're giving people opportunity to buy those containers, and when it gets there, then somebody is going to get that container and they'll move it out into the bush somewhere, and they will build a building out of it.
Yep.
And they'll utilize it for an eye clinic or whatever.
Right.
And so everything they can do to make sure that those people are being ministered to.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And they're continually looking for new ideas. They're going to share some of those.
Yeah. So if you are able, we want you to. If you're able to help unload and set up on Saturday at 5:00, we would love for you to be here. If you're not able to do that, but you want to come on Saturday night at 7 p.m. To the Westway building to hear about all of the things that Lifeline Christian Mission does, we want you to come. There's going to be snacks. There's going to be tea. There's going to be stuff like that. It's going to be really informal. We're just going to interact with the guys from Lifeline. One of the things that we want to do here at Westway Christian Church is not just send money to organizations or not just send food to organizations.
Right.
We want to engage them in relationship.
Yeah.
We want to know who the people are that we are partnering with.
Yeah. I would also say it's not only Haiti that they minister to. This is a global ministry.
Right.
Yeah.
So Saturday night at 5 and at 7, we're going to have two different things. We want you to come and participate in that. Mm-hmm. And then on Sunday morning, we have 2 food pack times ready to go.
Yep.
The first is at 8.
Yep.
And then the second group is, at 8, we're going to do some things. We're going to have communion at 9:45.
Right.
And then the second group is going to pack after communion.
Yeah. So when you come at 8 o'clock in the morning, go to the auditorium.
Right.
Don't go to the gym.
Right.
Go to the auditorium. We'll start there. We'll get our instructions there.
Right.
Then we'll put our protective gear on and move into the gym. Same way with the second group. When you come at 9:45, go to the auditorium. Don't come to the gym. Go to the auditorium.
Right. So we're going to have 2 different pack times, 8 and then 9:45. Communion is actually going to be at 9:45. We're going to pack till probably 11:30, 11:45, then load up everything, and then the guys from Lifeline Christian Mission are going to be on their way with the stuff that we pack. Then we can reset the gym and all those kind of things. I really want to stress a couple things. We want to really ask you to be on time. I know that that's a really big thing.
Yeah.
We really need you to be on time this week. We need you, if you've signed up for that 8 a.m., show up a few minutes early, be in the auditorium so we can start right at 8. And then the same thing for the 9:45 crew. We need you to be here on time.
Yeah, and I would encourage you to consider coming to the 8 a.m. if you haven't already signed up for the 9:45, because we have a lot more people signed up for the 9:45 time frame than we do the 8 a.m. time frame. And we're still keeping that physical distancing as much as possible, and so we're only setting up so many tables, and if we go over the amount of tables that we have to set up, we don't want to turn anybody away, but we may have to. If you hadn't signed up, your best bet to get in to help is at 8 o'clock.
Yeah. And then secondly, this is an intergenerational piece. That's one of our values here. There is something for all ages to do. If you, I've had someone say, hey, my father wants to come help. He's older, but he can't stand for an hour.
Right.
We have chairs available. Yep. There are things for people of all ages to do. We want families to do this together. And part of that is parents, moms, dads, you're responsible for your own children.
Yeah.
Here. So
we want your kids with you at your table.
Right, exactly. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to, in addition to packing the food, we also pay for the food.
Yes.
So our goal is to raise about $8,500. If you just want to support this financially, if you just go to westwaychurch.com/give, there'll be a button you can click on. If you want to give financially to our food pack, just go into that giving page and just make sure you select the food pack fund. And anything you give to the food pack fund goes to pay for the food pack.
Yeah.
You'll be able to do that Sunday morning as well. And if you bring check or cash and you want it to go to the food pack, we're going to have envelopes that you can put your gift in, and it will go directly through the food pack.
Awesome.
And I said this last year. It's in the email that's going to go out. Our desire is that this is an over and above giving.
Yeah.
Westway, our church body is so generous in this, and we don't want this to affect our general fund giving. We want to give over and above. And last year, those that gave, those that helped, you guys killed it. And we're going to ask you to do the exact same thing.
Yeah.
So we're going to collect our normal funds this week, and we're going to collect food pack. And we just ask that whatever you give to the food pack does not come out of your normal giving.
Right.
It's an over and above gift.
Yeah. I would say I can't tell you. Every time I've talked with Jeff, he said we've been looking forward to coming back all year.
Yeah.
They talked about it. They shared about it after last year when they were up here. Ben's coming from Ohio just because he wants to come back here.
Right. Yeah, they were really when we had to reschedule back in March, they were really bummed out.
Yeah.
Because like the weeks leading up to it, they were like, "Oh, are you sure? Or do you really want to?" And we're like, "No, we don't want to reschedule, but we have to." They were really bummed.
Yeah.
This has been something that we've looked forward to and we're excited about.
Yeah.
And we want you to be excited about it as well. So it's going to be an all weekend thing, starting at 5:00 on Saturday evening through probably noon on Sunday. There's going to be things to do. So we would love for you to come and participate in that.
Yeah.
So please do that.
Yeah, I think it's awesome that you, Westway, are ministering to people. And not only are you ministering to the people in Haiti, but you are ministering to the people that are ministering to the people in Haiti.
Yeah, that's really good.
It's just neat to see how the Spirit is working through you to reach people for Christ and to proclaim Christ.
Yeah.
And I want to say thank you for that.
Yep, we're excited about that. We feel that, so that's really cool.
Yeah.
So thanks for watching today. We hope to see you this weekend. At one of our food pack pieces, whether it's the setup, the Lifeline Christian Mission kind of Q&A is really what it's going to be.
Yeah.
And then the pack itself on Sunday morning. So we hope to see you at some, if not all of those things.
Yeah.
So thanks for watching today, and we will catch you over the weekend.
Have a great week.